Hey there, everybody. It's Diane Gilson with another one of our Better Numbers, Better Business series. And today we're going to be talking about your biggest payroll profit leaks, probably not anybody's most exciting topic in terms of, gosh, I hope this isn't happening to us, but let's just talk about it. And the big thing is, how do you avoid those things? And we have our COO in the background. Laura, are you seeing Christy, Bracken, or me on camera in the
I
background?
see all three of you on camera,
Oh,
ladies.
great. Okay,
Awesome.
that's wonderful because I can't quite tell. Okay, so good. So all three of us are here with you today. And, my little story, part of how I helped pick this picture out was that I just had a tub replaced with a walk-in shower. And that was all really exciting. But you know what? If I had walked into that shower and I had seen this, I would have been really, really upset. Okay. If anything had been leaking, whether it's a small leak or a big leak, it can have really big impacts. And so that's what influenced me to get this particular picture in place, because those leaks can be pretty devastating. That's one of, as I understand in the construction industry, for builders, water is one of the most destructive things that they can deal with, whether it's a leak in a roof or, coming up from underneath or whatever. So we want to get rid of those profit leaks because they can do just as much damage to your business. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at what we have here today. And this is why we're teaming up today. And so, of course, for employers, your employees normally represent one of your biggest investments. And I'm going to give the ladies a chance to introduce themselves here in a minute, but I like to let people know why we're doing this, okay? And of course, we have that financial aspect in our company. So from a financial perspective, of course, you're exchanging your dollars for what your team achieves. And of course, you're going to hopefully make profit on what you're paying out, but you don't want your costs to be too high to eat into your profits. And of course, any of those overruns that you encounter are going to eat into your profits because now your cost goes up and your incoming money stays the same. So you got to watch those overruns. And so here are three areas that Bracken and Christy are going to be talking our way through today. First of all would be waste, things like time theft and bad data and payroll processing time, any risks that you may be encountering. For instance, lawsuits, workers' comp costs, payroll tax issues, and tech deficiencies. Okay, so one of the things we talked about in prep for this was, what do the top people look for when they're coming in to work in your firm, as well as those invisible time and costs and what the heck is your competition doing? So before we move on to the next slide, I'm going to just take a moment and I'm going to let the ladies introduce themselves. So first of all, Christy, why don't you introduce yourself? I put some information about you up in the background, and I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thanks,
So.
Diane. I'm happy to be here. So I have been in the tech world for probably close to 4 years now. Before that, I was actually in the construction industry for the majority of my career. My husband and I owned an excavating company and a trucking company, and that's how I came across BusyBusy, as I was actually a client and used it in my own businesses to be able to do the things that we're going to talk to your audience here today about.
Okay, terrific. So glad to have you here. And Bracken, you and I have worked together on a number of different occasions, and
Sure
you
have.
always have lots to offer. So I'm going to put your very brief bio up here. So please share with us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here, Diane. Thanks for having us. I work in our partner and business development department here at BusyBusy. So we work really closely with Diane and Raquel and the team, and we love it. So being able to provide you guys with this webinar is super exciting for us. Like Diane mentioned, I've worked with BusyBusy for a while now, have a bachelor's degree in business and have grown up kind of in the construction industry. I was in the interior design industry before I came to BusyBusy, and my family has a GC, business general construction. So grew up helping out on the job site doing that type of stuff. So happy to be here, and had to bring Christy on to do this with me because she knows firsthand what type of leakages you guys can have as a construction company, and we're going to be able to give you guys some tips on how to combat that. So we're excited. Thanks for having us,
Okay.
Diane.
Alrighty, terrific. And then I imagine that a lot of the people here in the webinar know about my background, but I'll run through it real briefly. Consultant, trainer, speaker, author, and product developer, as well as spending many years with many, many different clients, helping them get their accounting systems set up specifically to do job costing. I'm not going to read through everything here, but I've been doing this for a while with this company. We're going into our 29th year. And I have gone about getting various certifications and awards out there. And this last year, I was named top pro advisor there's something like 400,000 pro advisors in the world. I'm not sure exactly how many are in the US, but there are a lot of them. So that was a huge honor. So I have been working with the construction industry and job costing since 1994. Before that, I was in banking and in a CPA firm. So that gets us to the end of our bios for each other. So we're going to have a good time chatting with each other. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you guys kick it off and take it from there. And I'm going to stop showing my screen so that we don't have to sit and look at a PowerPoint slide here. We'll go back to that right at the end, okay? So hopefully
Awesome.
you guys are still able to see our videos. Laura, are videos still available for people?
They sure are.
Okay, yeah, Laura's our COO here in the background and kind of monitoring us and helping us stay on track. So, okay, so I'm going to let you guys kick off with one of those first topics that we thought that we'd like to chat about, and we're just going to kind of have a panel discussion, and that way I'll jump in and drive them crazy as they're trying to do a presentation.
No, we're excited to be here, like I said, and we were joking before the webinar started that Christy and we could talk to a brick wall and just go on and on. So we're excited to bring some really thought leadership based information and topics to you guys today. Main things we're going to hit on. We're going to talk about payroll waste. We're going to talk about liability that you guys are experiencing as a construction company. And then we're also going to talk about tech. It's 2023. BusyBusy's been around for almost 13 years now, but the construction industry is known to be a good decade or so behind as far as implementing tech goes. So this is something that is going to help save you guys some money. So we're looking forward to working with you. We do have a couple of poll questions we'd love to ask you guys. We'd love for you guys to chat in, ask us questions, tell us about what you guys are currently doing. But we're going to start with payroll waste. And like I mentioned, one of the reasons I brought Christy on to do this webinar with us is because she has experienced owning a construction company, doing admin work, all of that good stuff. So we'd love to have you guys answer those questions. I mean, how many of you are required to spend more than an hour doing payroll?
Okay, let's see. Yep, that's our question. Some people don't create payroll. You guys are lucky, okay. But you know what? If you're working in your own business, you might not be doing the payroll, but there's a good chance that there is some time. At least you should be tracking your time if you're charging clients for your work, right? Okay, so I would say we've got enough votes in here, and I'm going to say close. And is it showing on the screen? If not,
Yeah,
I'll just tell you what the results are.
It's not showing, but it was about 50-50 as far as votes go. And then it looked like we had one or two people who don't create payroll. And like Diane mentioned, lucky you guys, because it's not a fun task. So Christy, let's talk a little bit about payroll waste and what that can mean. Because it can mean time theft, which may be unintentional, right? It can mean inaccurate data. It can mean a really long time to process payroll. So let's dive into that a little bit and talk to me about time theft.
Okay. Well, I will say the first and primary reason we purchased BusyBusy back in the day was because I was doing all of the administrative stuff and my husband was doing all of the operational stuff in the field. And being that we were a small family-owned business, there was a level of trust among him and his crew. And while I admired it, when I was doing the payroll numbers, things just felt a little off to me. I felt like there was a guy or two that just always seemed to have an extra 15 minutes here, an extra 20 minutes there. And when I asked my husband about it, he said, well, I think that he gets there sooner and he stays later because he's just a really committed employee, which I would love that. And we hope that that's the case with everyone. But as Bracken said, sometimes time theft isn't intentional and happens from the most well-meaning of individuals. I know in our product, we're able to make sure that people aren't clocking in early so that everyone is there. And that's a little bit of a liability thing, right? Like we want them to be there when there's eyes on them, when there's a supervisor, and when there's some safety requirements that have been handled before they clock in or as they're clocking in. But back to the guy that just kind of had me questioning what was going on. As soon as we implemented BusyBusy, we found out that he was actually clocking in from home. And home happened to be 45 minutes from the job site. So when we asked him about that, he said, well, I know you guys are growing the business and the profit's not always there to be able to give raises. So I just kind of decided that I was going to do that 45 minutes kind of as like a self-granted raise. Well, that was to the tune, he was our highest paid, our longest standing employee. And it was to the tune of about $18,000 a year is what he had granted himself in that self-granted a little bit of a bump there. So between that and the guys, maybe clocking in at the gas station up the street while they're getting their energy drinks and their nicotine for the day, those kinds of things actually equated to a total of about $40,000 the first year that we implemented a time tracking technology that was able to let us know where our employees were when they were clocking in. And again, time theft can be very intentional. It can be very unintentional. It can happen for a whole myriad of reasons, right? But what we do is we take you out as the middleman and we allow technology to really be that lever that you can pull to hold people accountable from within your organization.
I'm going to throw something in here too. Think about paper-based systems. And, when do people fill those out? Okay, if they're on a biweekly payroll, when do you think that they fill those out?
They fill them out the day before they're due.
Exactly.
Work.
Yep, night before they're. Okay, now, do you remember what you had for breakfast 3 days ago? Or lunch? Our memories are very faulty. And so, what happens, I think, particularly the paper-based system, and people are doing this after the fact, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, they're just doing their best estimates is to their hours. So not only their hours, but what jobs, since we're all about job costing, what jobs they were working on. So things can start to get very inaccurate when you don't have some sort of tracking system like that. So that's just been my experience talking to people over the years.
And that doesn't even go to the time that it takes to gather all of that paper, right?
Chasing people down, nagging people, chasing them down, trying to figure out what their handwriting is. Yeah, so we could have a whole thing just on paper timesheets and what are all the flaws and issues.
Yeah, we definitely could. And that's exactly what I was going to say is a lot of us don't remember what we had for lunch last Tuesday, let alone how many hours we worked on a specific project. So if hours aren't being accurately accounted for and put into the system, then that right there is your unintentional payroll theft or time theft. And if your data is not accurate, then how can your estimates be competitive if your data is wrong? How can you compete with the competition if you say you spent so many hours on a project that really didn't take you that long, or vice versa? How are you supposed to make any money? So yeah, and then gathering that time. I mean, labor is your biggest variable cost as a construction company, which is why you need to have that stuff in place so that you don't have that labor leakage. One thing that we talked a lot about too, Christy, is not only gathering that paper, like Diane mentioned, trying to read the handwriting, sift through the stains, and then hopefully you're typing in that information correctly as you're reading it, right? But payroll processing time. Christy, tell me about how long payroll took you.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. So we were on a weekly payroll system, which is a benefit a lot of construction companies are able to give their employees. And because of that, we were doing the process every 7 days and gathering everybody's information. And for those that were nice enough to do the addition for us, double checking all of the addition and all of that. And then taking the time to go through and see whether or not the job costing information was accurate, and having to go back out and either ask a supervisor, text back out to the employee like, hey, are you sure this doesn't seem right? Or, hey, I know you were on a crew of 3 that day, and the other 2 guys thought you were across town. So where were you? What was it that you were doing? That process in and of itself, cutting that out from my week, probably gave me back at least 2 hours, if not 3. And I was able to take that time, once that information was gathered technologically, and put it towards finding ways to implement technology into the company elsewhere and and kind of level the company up. So I would say that just if you do the simplest of a time tracking system where you're not gathering paper, and you have a nice report that adds everything up and calculates your overtime and calculates all of your job costing to where you can easily input it into another system, or bonus, it integrates with the system that you're using, and then that's just a couple clicks of a button. I can see your payroll going from maybe 6 hours a week to less than an hour. And Brecken, I'm pretty sure you actually have a client that experienced that very dramatically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one thing to think about too is that falls into your wasted hours and wasted wage as well. Like, why spend all this time processing payroll, losing money, when you could have something that was doing it for you? So I talked to another client this morning, but who had a very similar experience. But the one I wanted to tell you guys about was the admin of a tile installation company who we chatted with not too long ago. But I was talking to her. They had just transitioned off of paper time cards to BusyBusy. She was able to take her first real vacation, and she couldn't even remember how long. And the reason why she couldn't take a vacation was because the guys were turning in their paper time cards. So how was she supposed to get paper time cards from a hotel room in Hawaii when her team's back in Illinois? So because they moved from paper to something that was web and app based, she was able to access payroll and review signed time cards from anywhere, like a hotel room with a beautiful beach view. But it also went from running payroll that it was taking her like 5 to 6 hours a week to 45 minutes or less if there was maybe a slight error or a time card that needed to be changed there. And it was a major game changer for her and for their company, because similar to Christy, she wasn't just an admin. She also did estimating. She also did marketing. She also helped with scheduling. So being able to take that off her plate gave them the ability to scale the business even further. And I mean, it just really helps to show how important it is to find a practical approach to your payroll so that you're not wasting precious revenue there.
Can I throw in a new concept in here? I'd like to throw out a 3-letter word: joy. How much joy do people have when they're having to track down all that stuff and nag people? And not only that, what kind of relationship does it give you with the people who are working? Because then you become somebody that they don't like, okay? And you don't like them when they don't, when they don't cooperate. So I think it's interesting. I'm older. When you were growing up, work was work. Okay, it's not quite like that anymore. People want joy in what they're doing and having the fun of being able to work in a modern, updated system. We'll talk more about that later. But I think it's really important to think about, gosh, if you've got this payroll coming up at you every week, that's a burden. I mean, that's a mental weight that maybe you get 3 days where you don't have to deal with it. And then you're going, okay, now it's coming. I got to do it again. So, I know this probably wasn't in the initial thought process, but I wanted to bring that up because, man, having us be able to enjoy what we're doing
Yeah.
and not feel like it's just a big burden is really important.
And I was actually gonna bring that up, but from a different standpoint of if you want to create a better relationship between the office and the field, these tools help that. And not only that, but these tools allow you to know who your top performers are. Let's bring them some joy. Let's bring them some, some accolades for doing a great job, for taking great pictures on the job site, for clocking in and clocking out the way they're supposed to be, for maybe getting a few extra sticks of pipe in the ground that day because they didn't have to spend time at the end of the day filling out 18 pages of paperwork. So, this kind of technology can not only help you in the office, it can also create a great bridge out into the field to better that relationship and bring those guys some joy and some recognition for what they do, because it's a lot easier to do that when all of that data is easily collected.
Yeah. In fact, that actually leads us to another topic we are going to talk on, which is the lack of tech in the construction industry. So Christy, let's skip down to that, and then we'll come back to talking about liability and risk management. It just feels like it's fitting the conversation really well. So with that and the importance of making work an enjoyable thing for people, let's talk about one other poll question that we have, which, Diane, if you wouldn't mind sending it out, it's, have you ever encountered a misunderstanding or conflict over the hours paid to employees? I know that from being in management and interior design, there were some issues there because we didn't have a good system in place. So I can speak for myself in saying that we did run into that. And Christy, I know for a fact that you have as well. I mean, even with that guy in the 45-minute drive to work. But yeah, it looks like everybody who's answering has had at least one or two issues, or possibly even more, with hours paid. And I'm trying to think of the exact statistic, and Christy, maybe you can fill me in here, but employees, if they run into more than, I want to say, one issue with their payroll, it's like 80 or 75% of them will leave.
The statistic is that once an employee has encountered 2 payroll errors in their employee, 50% will look for employment elsewhere. And the kicker with that is it doesn't matter whose fault the error was. Even if the employee is aware that, oh, I forgot to clock in, or, oh, I didn't mark that down the way I was supposed to, or my dog ate my timesheet, it does not matter to them from an emotional standpoint. At that point, trust is broken, and they will look for somewhere where they can feel like those kinds of errors aren't going to happen either on their part or on the administrative part. So yeah, when you're talking about joy and trust and relationship building, it can be a game changer there.
And it looks like 80% or more of you guys have run into issues about hours paid. So it's something that just, it happens. It's something that if you're not doing it in live time, like Dan mentioned, I don't know what I had for breakfast 5 days ago. I'd have to maybe go back and look and see if I could chase it down. But that trust
unpleasant
from the field to the office is really important.
It's just
Go ahead, Dan.
unpleasant. And, I used the word joy before, but it's just, again, part of that emotional thing, like, oh, am I going to have to confront this person about this? Oh gosh, am I just going to let it slide? So it takes up mental space and energy. And I like the word trust in there, but it's not fun. It's another one of those things that just doesn't create a good environment for everybody. So, and I've seen this.
Given the current state of our labor market and how difficult it is, and more difficult it's becoming to find skilled labor, you need to do everything you can to make sure that those employees are happy and accountable, right? Like, we don't want to err on the side of making them so happy that you're losing money employing them, but you certainly could find a middle ground there and use technology as a way to do that.
So
Exactly.
to recap, one of the second way that construction companies are losing money is with that lack of adoption in technology. A players, that's what we call them here at BusyBusy. Those are your hard workers. Those are your number one guys. They want tech out in the field. One thing with construction that I think is really cool, whether you're in something more intricate like tile installation, interior design, or something on a larger scale like excavation, it's a bit of an art. And I know all those gruff guys, they're not going to want to come out and say it, but everybody wants to be proud of the work that they're doing. And something that comes along with using tech in the industry is that ability to look back on your work and say, look at how many hours I've put in. For any of you ladies out there, if you drive around with your husband or significant other who's in construction, how many of you are having your head jerked to the side every couple of blocks because he says, "Well, I worked on that building. That's a house that I built. That's a this, that's a that." They're proud of it. And as an employee, I like to show off the things that I do too. I think it's a pretty natural A-player way to go about work. So one thing Christina I wanted to touch on quickly is what it's like from my point of view to be somebody who grew up with technology. I had a computer in school when I was in first grade. I went to typing class. Like, I've grown up with technology, and that's what I expect from being hired at a job. And obviously I work for a tech company now, but let's talk about, Christy, what hiring was like for you owning owning an excavation company, what that was like 2 decades ago, or I don't know how many decades ago. Let's talk 12 years ago, okay? And
Okay.
what that was like versus when you guys brought on BusyBusy or just tech in general. What's changed?
I think that everyone's level of savvy has changed in regards to technology. You're going to have those guys that are kicking and screaming and don't want to do this. And then you're going to have the middle of the road guys that are kind of used to it. You know, they're door dashing their dinners and they're Ubering from concerts and doing their thing. And then you're going to have guys that are really going to be drivers of your business for the future. And those guys are really into the technology of it. And I can say even back in the day, Bracken, I think even before you were probably born, it was the same. It was the same even then. We had guys that were excited about the technology, and we had guys that, you know, would have rather gone to the dentist. But those guys that were excited about it are all still in the industry. They're a little bit older now. They're coming into foreman positions and superintendent positions. One of them happens to be my son, who, interestingly enough, I had to almost beat to death to get him to start clocking in and clocking out. But once he did, I constantly still to this day get calls of, "Mom, the system that I'm using it's not friendly. Can you talk to them about maybe finding a way to do it the way we did it with BusyBusy?" He became a complete influencer when it came to using technology in his day-to-day work. So even then, I think you could see those delineations. And now the pendulum's swinging. You're having fewer of the guys kicking and screaming and more of the drivers that are really interested in technology, what it can do for them, what it can do for their productivity, what it can do. Construction is a tight-knit group. Like, people know who those A players are. And the more they can be able to identify that, the better off they feel like they are.
Yeah.
And bringing a little additional historical perspective, since I started the company in '94. I mean, for years I looked because I saw those difficulties that people had with paper timesheets. And for years, I looked for something where people could record their time electronically, make it easier for the back office, and also be able to say what job, not just when did I collect. I mean, you could get time clocks where people could punch in and punch out, okay? But, you know, that's better than paper, okay? But we really wanted to find something that specifically would interact with QuickBooks, that could record time in, time out, but the job that people were working on, as well as what they were working on, what cost code, what phase of the job, for people that wanted to track that, because that's pretty important if you're looking at estimate versus actual. Is
Yeah.
somebody working on framing, or are they working on windows? You know, some of those big things. So, you know, there just wasn't anything around, okay, until there were just a couple of companies that popped up like BusyBusy that could start doing that. And I was just thrilled. I mean, I was just so happy. And of course, the next thing is you have to talk to people about it and get them used to that concept.
Yeah.
But sometimes I laugh and say, you know what, I'm so old that I worked on paper spreadsheets Okay, so there you go. So that you'd have to fold up and do footing and cross footing. So, I've seen the whole history all the way through from, moving from paper into electronics, and believe me, tech is better. So,
Yeah, it's cool to be able to go back and see how things have changed and what impact it's had on the industry. It's funny because one thing that's cool about my job is I get to do a lot of different things. And one of them is I get to meet with companies every day and talk to them about the BusyBusy system. And rather than calling it a demo, we call it a strategy session where we go in and strategize with that company how they can implement BusyBusy and how it's going to work for them and help their company. And I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day about a client he had just helped bring on to BusyBusy, and he was telling me that he was actually working with them about 17 months ago. So a little while ago, they were to the stage where they were creating his BusyBusy account, they were putting the info in, they were ready to get him up and going. And he came back and he was just like, I know as the owner of my company that my lead foreman, he's not going to use this. He's not going to. He's a good old boy, he's not going to use it. And so my coworker Dustin, he chatted with him and they tried to make it work, but this owner was just adamant that his lead foreman was not going to use it. So this is where the story gets kind of cool is fast forward to like a month or so ago, the same owner calls up Dustin and says something to the effect of, Dustin, I need to get signed up for BusyBusy right now. And Chrissy, Dustin, and he's so analytical and he's like, well, help me out. Like, what's changed? Is it something new in the product? Like, you were pretty adamant that your foreman was not going to use this. And he says something to the effect of like, I'm actually coming to you kind of with my tail between my legs because the foreman I thought would not use BusyBusy, he ended up leaving and starting his own company in February, left on good terms and everything. But he called me up the other day and he said, hey man, like, you got to check out this system that I introduced to my team. It's been a game changer. Ended up being BusyBusy, and this company owner was kicking himself. So it's funny to hear because it's exactly what Christy said, where some of the guys are probably gonna be a lot more into it than a lot of people expect. And he just ended up saying, like, I'm kicking myself. I should have rolled this out a year ago. It has had huge success with BusyBusy since. So kind of a funny and interesting story, but I think that it happens more often than we think. And that one just happened to be top of mind right before this webinar, but people are expecting it. People want that. They want to have that information at their fingertips. Nobody likes driving all the way back to the office, trying to find the tore up plans that are somewhere, or searching for the 3-ring binder underneath the driver's seat of their truck. It's a big deal to A players to have that.
Well, and that ties right back into, for that particular business owner, he bred his own competition, right? And now he knows exactly what his competition is using.
Exactly. So I mean,
you know what? I bet you most of those guys know how to stream Netflix, so they can work electronics. So there you go.
I always say if they can post their most recent deer hunt on Facebook or scroll through TikTok, they're going to be able to clock in and it's BusyBusy. We're super intentional with the way it's created. It's meant to be easy, but it is funny what you get in your head about and think that people aren't going to do. And yeah, bred his own competition. And we can circle back again to that, Christy, of not having accurate data. Your numbers are either going to be too low that you're getting the bid, but you're not making any money, or your numbers are going to be so outrageously bloated and inflated that you're not going to get the bid. So where's that accurate middle ground? How do we be on target? How did you do it before you got BusyBusy?
We didn't. My husband, he jokes that in the industry, he throws a rock out and says, put the manhole there. But that wasn't really quite the joke. I mean, it really was like, all right, well, think back. And do you feel like we made any money on that job or did we not? And I think that given the industry's environment today, even more so than having the best bid, you want to have bids that appeal to the best clients, right? We don't all want to work for the guy who's not going to pay us. We want to work for the person, the company that is looking at those bids is saying, okay, they've built enough profit into this bid that I know they're going to have a good experience on my job, and I want that for them, and I want them to make a little bit of money and move forward. Obviously, you don't want to be the high guy, right? Like, you don't want to be the guy that's always way overinflated, but you don't always want to be the low guy. You want to be the accurate guy. You want to be the guy that and then the next job comes along, and that we find out that that particular general contractor or that particular owner group paid their bills and they paid them on time. And if you had a change order, it wasn't an argument. That's the one you want to be working for. So not only is it going to increase your profit margin, but it's also going to make your company stronger, because who you're servicing is going to be a better group of individuals. And by that I mean company. Yeah.
For sure. And I want to be super accommodating of everybody's time too. And we have a third one that we wanted to cover that's really important, and that's the liability and risk that you guys are experiencing as a construction company, and the way that that can affect your day-to-day and your dollars coming in. So we'll hit on that super quickly, because I do think it's important to include. And one thing I want to talk about first with that liability management is our photos and notes that are available within BusyBusy. So taking a photo at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, we found that that's best practice for a company. And there's a couple of different things that you guys are susceptible to as construction companies, one of them being lawsuits. And that can bleed into your profit pretty dang quickly. And along with lawsuits, there's also injuries and worker comp claims that once those are up, they're pretty hard to get back down, and they take pretty significant time to get those worker comp claims down. So, Christy, talk to me a little bit about worker comp claims and what you have experienced on your side, and how you wish that this feature would have existed when you used BusyBusy.
I would have loved. Yeah, I would have loved this feature. And actually, when I first came on to BusyBusy and was onboarding clients, it was the one I always made sure I showed them. You know, workers' comp claims, they nag at an administrator's psyche. Mm-hmm. You aren't on the job. You know, you're not a boot on the ground. And so you don't always know what's happening in the field. And while you can have a guy have a pinch point, he's installing some shoring and he has a pinch point and he pinches his finger and it seems like no big deal. He's not going to tell you that because he doesn't want to be told not to come to work the next day. But certainly if you're asking him at the end of the day, they're held a little bit more accountable. And that, as an administrator, that allows me to follow the procedures that I need to follow. I need to file a first claim. I need to make sure that I'm giving that employee all of his rights and being able to tell him, if you feel like you need to be seen, this is where you can go. These are the steps. This is what you need to do. And without some kind of tool to where that question is asked at the end of every day, without kind of the pressure of a foreman being the one asking, that's a really difficult process to stay on top of. And having a tool like what we have now in BusyBusy, where it's just part of the end of their day, where they say, were you hurt or did you witness anything on the job that should be brought to our attention? I'm sleeping better, right? Like, I know that question has been asked and answered. And even more so than the no, I wasn't hurt. You know, we have a friend who was almost put out of business because a guy, it was a Friday afternoon. Our company was located in Denver, and it was a weekend, Friday afternoon weekend, and it was a storm weekend. And a lot of construction guys will moonlight doing snow removal over the weekend when there's, you know, everything's muddy and there's nothing they can do during the week. Well, over the weekend, he went and helped a buddy, a cousin, whatever, do some snow removal, and slipped and busted his ankle. And came back Monday and told this friend of mine that he had busted it Friday and just was too afraid to say anything. Well, if he had answered that question on Friday afternoon, that no, I was not injured, that company wouldn't have had the uphill battle that they had with the workers' comp claim, trying to prove that that individual wasn't injured on their job site. They were injured somewhere else at another time, you know, whether it's rolling out of your pickup truck, you know, after being at the bar and you break your ankle, or he was doing snow removal, trying to earn a few extra bucks for his family. You know, that's probably where that liability is so well handled within a tool like BusyBusy.
I've
Well,
got a
and
poll out here that we might want to run. Okay. Have you ever encountered a situation involving a false workers' comp claim? You could go ahead and ask that. I'll hit launch on that.
And it's funny, Christy, because I've heard a lot of the stories that you've had and things you've experienced from the BusyBusy client side, but that's something that we hear from clients all the time, or stories just like that. And it looks like most people have answered here, and luckily you guys are answering no. One thing that I've heard before is it's not even have you experienced a workers' comp claim, will you experience a workers' comp claim, it's when will you experience something like that. And having that information like BusyBusy can provide at that end of day, it can be major for you. And that goes for all types of lawsuits or worker comp claims, which is, it brings me to another story I want to tell you guys, because I mean, it looks like most people have answered and it's a no, but another thing we hear from clients all the time are lawsuits from shoddy work that they assume has been done by that company. So while none of you have experienced a worker comp, super happy to hear that. One other thing we want to talk about too is the different liability from, I'm trying to think of the word, like work complete, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I was talking to a company locally here in Southern Utah who had just been using BusyBusy for a number of years, and he was telling me a story from a few years ago where they got a letter from an attorney, and it was, oh, there we are. Got a letter from an attorney saying, well, let me back up. This company was an excavation company, so they did a lot of rock structure, large rock walls, all that type of stuff. It had collapsed. So he's telling me he gets this letter from an attorney saying that he's been sued because of the quote unquote shoddy work that they did and the fact that the wall had collapsed. So he hopped into BusyBusy. Like I said, he'd been using it for a few years, hopped into BusyBusy, pulled that project's photo album because his team took photos of the job when they first started in the day, progress throughout the day, and end of day. He pulled that photo. By the way, all those photos are GPS timestamp, date stamped, so you know exactly when and where it was taken. Pulled those photos, sent them off to the attorney and said, hey, this is the work that we did. We did good work. So he sends it off to him, and attorney goes kind of silent on him for a few weeks and ends up reaching back out and saying, hey, we looked at those photos. Everything you did looked good, looked up to code. So we kept digging. He ended up finding out that the attorney found out that a neighbor was putting in a pool, and when the pool was being dug, the pool company busted a pipe and just shoved a rag into it. So they just kept going on with that rag shoved in, and the rock wall actually held up longer, much longer than it should have. So attorney said, hey, great work. Sorry for the inconvenience. We're going to go after this other guy. And anyway, the local company who experienced that, his joke is, in that instance alone, BusyBusy paid for itself multiple times over. And I mean, just the way that can destroy a business overnight. Same thing with those false worker comp claims. Being able to protect yourself from that it's next level to avoid those profit leaks.
Cool. Well, thank you. I am going to, I recall, I'm going to go back out and show my screen again. I've got some questions out here, but before we do that, every time I ask somebody to come on to do one of our sessions, I always kind of strong arm them and say, you know what? Could you put together something special for the people that are attending this webinar? And in this case, Bracken and Christy did put together something special for any of you who would like to give BusyBusy a shot. So could you share with us what that is?
Yeah, I mean, we're super, again, grateful for the partnership with Diane and Info Plus, and grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys. And we wanted to be able to give you guys an offer through the webinar. And so BusyBusy, we'd love to chat with you about it further. And if you mention this webinar when you chat with us, then if you pay for your year up front or for 12 months, you're going to get 3 months of additional credit for your entire crew. So we're really aware of the seasonality in construction, and we only bill per employee who actually use, but we're going to get you some extra credit in there to last you a bit longer. So come check out BusyBusy and make sure to mention that you heard of us through Diane and the Info Plus webinar. And yeah, we'll get you guys extra taken care of and help plug up some of those profit leaks, not just with a rag, but actually do it right.
Cool. Okay, well, we'll keep all that contact information. And of course, you guys can download a handout through the GoToWebinar, and we'll also be sending out follow-up emails. But now I've got a few extra questions, and then we'll have a final screen with all that additional information available for you. Okay, so I had put some questions. I like to kind of be prepared to ask my panelists some extra questions. So, Christy, what new features? I know BusyBusy, I'm always getting things that says, oh, we just added this feature and so on. So what things have been added recently that you really like, that is a good addition to what maybe you initially experienced?
Yeah, I would say one that I haven't gotten to play with often, but I'm super excited about is our bulletin, our team messaging feature. I think that it is incredibly impactful, again, to the tune of making sure you have an easy avenue to ask questions and share information with your team, and not having to go back out into your text messages and have a 15, 20, 30 person thread that is just so hard to follow and understand. That messaging feature, I think, is one that I would have had a ton of fun with my team and would have loved to have been able to use.
And you don't have to wonder if they opened their email or not.
Nope, acknowledgements included, so you can make sure that you know for a fact that they read it.
Okay. One thing I loved, I'm going to throw this out, and I don't think it's been mentioned, but buddy punching, which, can be done in other circumstances. You guys have systems to guard against that, so that people can't say, oh, well, Joe asked me to punch in for him because he's running 10 minutes late. So I think that's kind of a very cool feature, is that it stops the buddy punching time theft. Okay, so another question is, if there's a company and they're paying travel time from the shop to the job site, can a mobile app like BusyBusy, can you support that if they also want to use the GPS? If the company wants to use the GPS?
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually something I was talking to a potential client about this morning. It's really easy to do. And one thing to note as well is I hear it being a point of concern for companies, and that is, what if they don't have cell phone service? Sometimes they're out in the boonies, and how are they supposed to do that? Yeah. So with BusyBusy, our app works offline. So if they don't have cell phone service, they can still log into projects and clock time. And then the second they hit cell phone service, all that info will push into the cloud, and you'll be able to see it back in the office. So that's one question that we hear a lot. Second thing that we hear a lot that has to do with GPS and a mobile app supporting it is, we can't see where employees are when they're not on the clock. So if Bob's at the bar Friday night and his wife gives you a call, wants to know where he is, look at that BusyBusy app. We can't see that. We're really intentional about employee privacy, as well as the data that we use on their phone, which using BusyBusy for a month equates to like watching a 5 or so minute YouTube video. So those are a couple of context things I want to say before I talk about how we can pay travel time, shop time, all that good stuff while still using GPS. Our GPS is project specific. So if you want to put a geofence around Christie's remodel, for example, what we have you do is give your employees the ability to clock into what's called travel time as a project, or even shop time. So when they first arrive on the shop and are prepping everything to go out in the field for the day, they can clock into that shop time or travel time. And then once they arrive on site at Christie's remodel, they can really easily clock in because they're within that geofence.
Great. Okay. So when they punch in, you can do that via the GPS, or is there face recognition too?
Yes, we can combine both.
Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, sure. We can combine both of those. So you can have facial recognition to be able to clock in and clock out. And then in addition, we can have requirements to where you have to have your GPS enabled to be able to clock in to the app and then into certain projects. And so when that happens and that clock in happens, it drops a pin and you're able to actually see their location at that point.
Nice. Okay. How safe is the data? There's a lot of data flying around out there. I hate to think how many data points have passed through my body in the last 5 minutes. But
Very
how
true.
safe is the data as it's out there floating around?
Yeah, so another really great question, and I have two kind of answers for that. One of them being data can mean data. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, and one of those that we hear a lot from employees is, I don't want an app tracking me and always knowing where I am. And that again goes back to, we can't see you when you're not on the clock. We're not Facebook. We're not listening to you stealing your data. Christy and I and the rest of BusyBusy's team, we don't have time for that. So that's not something you have to worry about within the app. But as far as having company information stored, there's obviously privacy and permission settings in place. So if you don't want a specific employee to be able to view a budget you've input on a job, that's all permission space. We can shut that down so only specific people can look at it. And then the third thing I think that has to do with safe storage is the servers that BusyBusy uses. And we use the Amazon Web Storage service, and that is what a lot of banks use, a ton of tech companies use. So it's really high level, super safe to have your data stored in. So Christy, if you have anything to add to that, would love to hear from you as well.
No, we're down. I just want to let you guys know we're down to a couple minutes, so I'm going to pop a couple more questions on the screen, and then I'd like to get into our final screen. So any of these, the estimated versus actual time and estimated versus actual cost?
Yes, our budgeting feature does a great job of that. We're able to track the budgets as how you set them up. So if you want to say this was how many man hours I bid the work at, or this is how many man dollars, labor dollars I bid it at, you can actually put that in at the beginning of a job, track it all throughout the job. We've got some great visual keys there to help you track it. And then, yes, we do also track equipment time. There again, you can put in the time that you're expecting, the time that you bid it at, and the actual time that the operator was in that piece of equipment. So,
Terrific.
yeah.
I'll bet it also tracks woman time.
That's
I call it man hours, but
we pay that out at triple time. So yeah, definitely a trackable item.
okay, all right. Have to give the ladies our due. Okay, so lots more of them in construction these days. Okay, so for your free assessment or to get more information, you can. We have both of the emails here. Pretty easy emails to remember. Bracken at busybusy.com or Christy at busybusy.com. And of course, to get that extra credit, and we usually put a limitation when we post these out on our website. We say those offers are good for 30 days from the day of the webinar. At any rate, because you got to put a limit on some of those, and people will go back and watch webinars we've done several years ago. So for sure, that is available, and you'll be able to get these handouts with clickable links. And then I would like to take just a moment at the end to talk to you a little bit about some of the products that we have available and services. Our most popular product is our online job cost training for QuickBooks Desktop. We call that CAMP, the Construction Accounting and Management Program. We also have a pre-built construction template for QuickBooks that's called Accounting Pro. So if you have a need to have a nice clean startup, that's a good way to go, or maybe you're moving out of a different accounting system. We also have something that really ties in with what we talked about today, and it's our Employee Cost and Pricing Analyzer, ECPA, and it actually computes labor burden, and I also show you how to get that to auto post inside QuickBooks within that product. So that's going to give you more accurate reports and can make a big difference in how you decide to assign which people to which parts of the job. We also have month-end closing checklist for people that want to make sure their books are accurate at the end of the month. Well, you can go out and get a free self-assessment on our site where you can look at your current profitability management tools, and you'll get a score. And of course, we don't bug you when you do that. You'll just get to see the score and see where you stand. So also we can help you choose the best QuickBooks and enterprise software because we're solution providers for Intuit and lots of other things. So that is where you would get in touch with us. So I think we made it. We're about 10 seconds from the top of the hour. So we got all of this information out to you guys in that time frame. I want to thank you so much for attending this with us. And I also want to thank our terrific presenters, panelists, Bracken and Christy with BusyBusy and the great stories that you brought to our listeners and things to think about for their companies.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us, Diane. And last thing to mention at the top of the hour is even if you are watching this past 30 days, give us a call. We love working with Info Plus, and we're grateful you guys watched the webinar. We'll be sure to get you a little something, even if it's after the 30 days. So don't hesitate to reach out, and thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Everybody have a great week and month. Okay, see you all soon. Bye.
Yeah.